Earlier we debated the future of planning with Chris Johnson of the Developers Urban Taskforce and David Shoebridge, planning spokesman for the Greens. Gentlemen, welcome. Chris Johnson, let's talk code accessible development first. I tried to explain it in that setup piece. Why is its removal an opportunity missed in your view?
The current process we've got, Quentin, for planning approvals in New South Wales is a total mess. It goes on for ages. We have battles of individual groups all over the place. People only start looking at a project right at the end when an issue comes up. What we need to do is calm this down, as they have done in other states, Queensland, Victoria, where people get involved in setting the broad rules for where development is going to occur. What communities have got to understand is we are growing, we are changing. 1.5 million more people coming to Sydney in the next 20 years. They've got to go somewhere. Let's get everyone to agree basically how that's going to be done, the sort of places, locations, heights, types of buildings, and then we can have a quick process if you comply with those rules.
This is a government that said they'd return planning powers to the community, yet it turns out the centrepiece of what they wanted in their planning bill was laws that excluded people from having a say about the development that goes on in their local community. It's all right for Chris to say that his industry doesn't want to have people interfering with the planning process when new buildings are happening, and they only want them to engage at a strategic level. But the fact is, people, it's human nature, they don't get engaged at broad strategic planning. They get engaged when there's a particular development in their particular neighbourhood, it's going to impact their property, and they have a democratic right to have a say in that. And industry doesn't like it.
It's property right. You're right.
It's property rights, but millions of dollars have been spent by people trying to get a project, trying to work out what to do. It's a hopeless system to try to solve our accommodation of future populations. I mean, as I say, 1.5 million, 32,000 houses needed every year in Sydney, and we get 21. We're way below what we do because everyone's got to battle. It's not helping the future community, the current community, the grandkids, children of current people in Sydney. We've got to get a better system. I think people need to have the responsibility to help solve this bigger problem, not just deflect it away and then when someone says we're going to build a building of X floors, start a whole discussion as why.
Okay, look, does the Greens support urban consolidation around transport corridors as a way of lifting densities which all conurbations have to do?
Well, the Greens do support sensible infill development. In fact, when you look across Sydney, some of our most beautiful and livable suburbs are also some of our densest. Suburbs like Newtown in the inner west, as a green, happy place, Newtown, but it's also a beautiful green place to live. But it's also the 18th most densely settled suburb anywhere in Australia. You go to Bondi. Beautiful place, lovely mixture of terrace houses, walk-up flats. It's the 9th most densely settled suburb. We don't need his dystopia to get density in New South Wales.
Look, I agree there's a variety of approaches. We've always pushed a variety of approaches, but you've gone out, the Greens, particularly you, David, and scaremongered the communities out in the eastern suburbs, on the North Shore, along Parramatta Road, saying, this one here, eastern suburbs of Gris, Anzac Parade, developer bonanza. There's going to be high-rise right down to the seaside, it says, high-rise to the seaside. I've looked at the plans for Anzac Parade. There's one bit that has buildings of about 10 stories to 20 stories at Maroubra Junction. The rest is low-rise, just what you said. But you're scaremongering this
Chris,
issue.
you say plans. This bill was a facilitative bill. And what the government had said very clearly was that an entire corridor from the airport all the way through the eastern suburbs, all the way through the lower North Shore, all the way through out to the Northwest Business District will be a growth corridor. They said the same about a growth corridor that cuts through about 100 square kilometres of the heart of Sydney, all the way from Glebe out to Parramatta. They want code-accessible development in those areas, and they want to exclude the community's right to have a say about individual developments.
That's not the case.
That's the fact. I mean, Chris can deny it till it's black and blue. The government amendment provided for exactly that.
David, where are these 32,000 houses going to go each year? Where's the 1.5 million people coming to Sydney going to go in the next 20 years? You can't just keep deflecting it and say, you know, it might happen one day, we want low rise and things like this. Most people, a lot of people, actually like apartments. 30% of people now live in apartments.
Look, I'm all for building a city that people want. How do you build a city that people want? You ask the people that live there. No. And that's where we're at odds.
I want to move on to housing affordability because given the dynamics we've described, we do have an affordability crisis here, unmet demand, and I know you want to build a hell of a lot more housing units in New South Wales, but where does the industry concede this will not assist necessarily, because of the high prices, housing affordability?
No, we'll assist, Quentin, it's about supply. If you only have a few houses, they're going to be very expensive. If you've got lots of them, the market price goes down. Just like bananas from Queensland. You know, if they're oversupplied, the price goes down. Same with the housing. We need to get a lot more housing.
Don't you need those special provisions for housing affordability?
It can help in some areas, but the biggest issue is to get supply. 20,000 people leave New South Wales every year to go to Queensland and Victoria. That means they can't get accommodation here. We need a lot more housing, and it's so difficult to get housing in Sydney and New South Wales that people are giving up our developer members in trying to do it.
Well, this is the big lie put by the property industry. And Chris is talking about, say, an additional 30,000 housing units per year in Sydney. We've got a housing market in Sydney that's consisting of about 1.6 or 1.7 million units. Most of the price for housing is established by churn in that existing market, driven by...
What's your fix to housing unaffordability?
Well, we need to get rid of the drivers for these unsustainable housing prices in Sydney, and they are negative gearing. They are tax concessions for investment.
You get rid of negative gearing?
Yes, tax concessions for investors. We've seen private superannuation funds investing in residential real estate, pricing out new home buyers, inflating the overall market. And when this large market of 1.6, 1.7 million housing units lifts in value, the little 30,000 additional housing units that come in through the new construction, even in Chris's utopia of a new planning system, is going to have little, if any, impact on this broad market that's extremely deep and driven by far more fundamentals than just this relatively modest increase in housing. It will have a marginal impact, but a very marginal impact on affordability.
Final quick word.
Well, the crucial issue is where housing goes. You've got to put it where public transport is, where there are town centres, where work is. It's a whole planning issue as to how you locate it. This simplistic argument that somehow we should just have residential houses everywhere and then bigger high-rise somewhere else. We've got to get the right balance as to where this goes. What you've been saying is going to happen everywhere. High-rise in everyone's back garden. It's absolute nonsense.
Gentlemen, thanks very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, Quentin.